Shabbat shalom, everyone. I hope you're doing well. So we are in the final parsha of the Torah. We don't actually read it tomorrow on Shabbat. We will read this, I believe, on Tuesday, the final day of Sukkot. But the final parsha in the Torah is called VZot Habracha, and this is the blessing. And this parsha always makes me very emotional, and it's very weird, but I guess it's more like just endings that make me sad. And I think also this final, I can just I can see it in my cinematic eye what it looked like for Moshe to walk up to Har Nevo, to walk up to Mount Nebo, and to have to leave the Jewish people, to see them go off into the land, off into the distance, going into the land of Israel with Yehoshua, with Joshua as their leader now. And it just makes me very emotional, because what did Moshe do? His whole life gave to the Jewish people, gave and gave and gave and gave and supported and supported and supported. And they were just so obstinate and difficult. But what he did recognize is that a leader cannot be a leader forever. There's beautiful stuff said about Moshe before he passes away. So I'll just read in the very end. Moshe was 120 years old when he died. He had not dimmed, nor had he lost his natural freshness. He had not dimmed, nor had he lost his natural freshness. So what our commentators tell us is that, what does this mean? It means that he was as sharp as he had been from day one. So he's 120 years old. Obviously, people lived for longer amounts of times back in the day, but he didn't dim in his brain at all. He wasn't just alive for 120 years. He was just as smart and as wise as he was at the very beginning, at the very end. And he didn't lose his natural freshness. It is said that if a body is completely devoid of sin, when it's interred in the ground after death, the body still doesn't decompose at all. It just, it stays as is. And there's all these stories about certain rebbes that their graves had to be moved, and for whatever reason they were dug up and their bodies were completely intact. Whatever, it's not a scientifically proven fact, but this sort of idea of a body that can maintain itself because it's so devoid of sin is how we describe Moshe. So before his death, he was so devoid of sin and so pure that he looked the same and was also the same in his head. And why? So what is so great about Moshe? So we learn that Moshe is a very humble guy. We learn that he's a very devoted guy. But the main thing that I think keeps Moshe young is the fact that he spent his literal entire career as the leader of the Jewish people transmitting and sharing knowledge, Jewish knowledge. I think that there is nothing that lives longer than transmitting your knowledge to others, whether that means through your children, whether that means through your students. There is nothing more powerful and more long-lasting than sharing meaningful things like Torah, like Judaism. And Moshe maintained his youth because he spent his whole life teaching and passing on Judaism to other people. And so when he gave, he got in return. And I just find this so powerful and so moving. And that's why, we admire him so much. And it is said that, there was no one like Moshe before Moshe, and there will not be anyone like Moshe after Moshe. He was such a special leader, a humble guy who was so devoted to God, but also defended the Jewish people. And he also recognized that, he pleaded with God to be let into the land of Israel. He pleaded a lot of times, 515 times to be exact. That's in VZot, the parsha that we talked about a few weeks ago. And he wasn't allowed in. But he also blessed Joshua, the next leader of the Jewish people, before Joshua was sent off in the saga of the spies, Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, when the group of 10 spies went into the land of Israel and came back and said, their fruit is big and the people are huge and we shouldn't go in there. Before they went, Moshe blessed Yehoshua. He was first Hosea, and then Moshe added a yud to his name to emphasize his connection to God, and sent him off into to spy. He was a leader, and he made other leaders, and that's really super powerful, and I find that very moving. So that is why Moshe maintained his youth all to the end, and I think that's the motto of Torah. That's the message that I get from the Torah, is that it makes our lives better, and if we share it with others, it makes others' lives better, and it helps us to maintain our youth, and we not dim, and we stay fresh forever. Shabbat Shalom, Sukkot Sameach. I hope you all are celebrating, and God willing, speak to you next week.